Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Well, it's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikele.
It's a great start of a fresh week. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
I can't believe Kayode is back already. Welcome back from Ekiti.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, Nigeria. Welcome, Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, yeah, we're just picking up on this scenario. Much as in Adamawa, we see the governor distributing relief materials to some IDP camps. But we also do know, talking about IDP camps, it's not new to the country. You see several scenarios in Yobe, you see in Bauchi, you see some parts of Taraba. As a matter of fact, looking through a certain UN report, which they published in 2018, so it goes a little way back, where they did say that the study they conducted, they thought that 7.7 million, 7.7 million required urgent life-saving assistance. And this was as at then, so you could imagine how some of these things have progressed. But then there was another one which talked about since about the same period. And then they looked at conflicts in those regions. There's Adamawa, Yobe, in northeast Borno, and several other areas, the kind of armed conflict that's been going on there. And this doesn't even factor the kind of scenarios we see reported in Benue, in Jos, in some of those other areas, wherein consistent displacement of residents seems just to be happening with reckless abandon. And then there are several other parts of the country where, we report these killings and attack, either farmers are being killed, herdsmen are being attacked, or just kind of complaints and kind of scenario. Well, much as on the one hand, it's good for this to happen, but I also do remember that we have talked about the state emergency management agencies or the NEMA, their capacity to address some of these challenges. But some of the questions we need to ask ourselves is that do we actually want to keep allowing these kind of things happen? I mean, you see several persons who keep asking questions as to how do arms even go through the border and get into this country? So, but the amount of armed conflicts basically that is going on in the country, it's mind-boggling. And to say the least, it's not just been impressive. The authorities, I mean, everybody knows how challenging the country has been grappling with addressing the security challenges we face in this country. So I don't think we're saying anything new, but beyond the rhetoric of the authorities saying, well, we're giving this kind of order, we want this kind of thing to happen. But look through the figures, look through those who have been displaced from their houses, those who have been killed, who've got no hope, those who are consistently attacked, and it just appears as though government seems helpless. And then, do we even talk about police? They barely respond when these calls happen. So you just ask yourself the big question, what really is going on? I mean, we have to do way much more. I don't know how I can convince anyone that some people don't know what is going on. This doesn't look like happenstance. It just appears as though there's way much more to this than meets the eye.
So there are different categories, really. I mean, you just split everything on the table this morning. I'm wondering where to pick from. So there are people who, I mean, they can't say they don't know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is not an ungoverned space. Nigeria is fully governed, and we ensure we go through that cycle every 4 years. So we have people that certainly know at least what's going on. And some who know what should do, I imagine know what should do, but it looks like we're not doing what we ought to do. Looking at the figures of IDPs, it's one thing, yes, we see those people, but then it's an indication of something much bigger. We can talk about the war in Ukraine, for example. You know, there are millions of people displaced as a result of the war. Yeah. And it's expected that once the war is over, people will return. That is
clearly defined scenario.
And people will return, they'll start the rebuilding process. But I mean, are we in a state of war? Are we not in a state of war? You know, we thought that the war against Boko Haram had reached or at least is reaching a conclusive
so they tell
stage.
us.
you know, or the war against banditry, we know that's big. So essentially, this is just an indication that there's some sort of war, active war ongoing right now in all of those areas. Because these people have been there. We've had career IDPs, as it were. People are in IDP camps. They give birth to children. These children go to schools, or at least some sort of schools. They get their medical services from there, or at least lack of it, and all of that. So it's just years of coasting around in that IDP. And I just want us to face the fact that there is an active war situation ongoing. That's why these people cannot return home. I recall the Borno State governor last year saying he wanted all the IDPs to return by the end of, I think it was by the end of last year. But clearly, there's still a lot of challenges in that area. So the questions we should be asking, as you said, is the people that clearly know what is going on. I mean, different levels to this. The security, there's an economy around this. Let's be honest. There's an economy around the insecurity. And then the people who ought to do something, at least know what they ought to do. And it looks like they're not doing it.
Absolutely. And I want to pick up on the point of it's not happenstance. You know, we keep treating the symptoms, but we're not treating the root cause. There are certain questions we must ask if we must treat the root cause. What is the goal? What is the agenda of those who are interested in depopulating some aspects of the north, which is now gradually moving further down south? What is the intention of those who are burning houses, who are razing down the homes of people, who are displacing people? What is their goal? What is the end game? Why is it continuing? As you say, there's an economy around it, and the people that Nigeria is up against, they are sophisticated people who can take care of their hostages, for a long period of time, who can feed them. And
who know how to demand 100 million naira.
Absolutely. These are the people we're dealing with. So why is this economy thriving? And if we continue to treat the symptoms, we have to understand that there can be no peace without justice. So who are these perpetrators? Why have we been unable to rein them in? These are some of the things that we should look at. If indeed education is continuing for children who have been displaced, whose parents have been displaced, that is fantastic. But I doubt that education is continuing during this wartime. So these are some of the things that should be looked into. The consequences of this displacement, of this depopulation, what's going to happen to women who have now lost their husbands, children who have been orphaned, whose livelihoods have been suspended, whose lives have been put on hold, practically. These are some of the issues that we should look at. Maupe, I wonder how you weigh in on this.
I would not disagree with you, Buki. Largely, we need to keep an eye on it, because if we think that, living in the city, somehow we're protected from this or we're immune from it. In recent times, we've begun to see an influx of people who normally will be in rural areas, farming. And don't forget that the cities depend largely on, the agrarian community to provide food for those of us in the city, because very little farming goes on here. But besides that, we're beginning to see an influx of these people who are seeking safety, essentially, coming into the city, having nowhere to stay, and, starting new ghettos. So you will find that, even life as we know it in the city begins to get threatened. It's no wonder that Lagos now has to place a ban on Okada, because, more and more people on a daily basis are pouring into Lagos, land of opportunity, seeking greener pastures and just looking to, make a living and get some safety, because where they normally would live is becoming a problem. So you have all of this conflict point. Now, I know that people have spoken about some grand agenda, but there's also the low-level conflict which you have between communities. We used to see that in the past, but sometimes I think there was a warning mechanism, or there was some alert that, leaders that are concerned should get, that will help them resolve this conflict before it conflagrates. So you could have, communal clashes, the type that are getting rather deadlier these days, are getting, becoming of a large-scale level. So some communities have had this, age-long animosity, and, somehow they find ways to manage it. But in the absence of any mechanism, any conflict resolution mechanism, these things could sometimes get out of hand. And with the situation at hand where most people are angry, they're hungry, they're frustrated, you already have a waiting recipe. I mean, I think that also we need to be able to enumerate. And I think that this is where the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs should now come in. We should be able to say, in how many states do we have internally displaced persons camp? Almost every state, and I say that very advisedly, almost every state now has an internally displaced persons camp. Some of them for conflict, others for other issues, maybe humanitarian issues. For instance, maybe when flooding happens in a community, there needs to be a place to evacuate people to till the flood subsides, etc. But I do know that actively, some states now have permanent internally displaced persons camp. If we're to look at the number of people there in each of the camps and add them all up, I think the numbers might shock us. Borno used to have as much as 2 million. Adamawa, which also experienced some conflict with the Boko Haram crisis, has been able to largely be free of that now. But now it has to deal with intercommunal clashes. Taraba had its own fair share. So Kaduna, you just named them. Almost every single state now has, even Abuja here, has an internally displaced persons camp. I think that we need to pay a closer attention to the issues that are causing conflict, displacing lives, displacing people, stopping livelihoods, and that could have a greater impact for this unity, which we love to tout, and also the larger well-being of our society.
Well, yeah, well said. So if not, we're not being doomsday-ish, but these are facts and figures. If we thought NSAS was a thing, because many thought, where did all these people come from? Well, they've always been there. And these people are angry, they're hungry, just waiting to take their pound of flesh on the system. So we need to, way before now, do something about all of this. Let's go on and take you through some of the dailies in a moment. Come on, let's start with Daily Times. They pick up on the elections that happened in Ekiti. There you go. Ekiti, Gubapo, how Oyebanji emerged winner. It's big lead right there on the front page. Buhari, Fayemi, others congratulate governor-elect. SDP rejects results, heads for court. Oyebanji's camp dares Oni to challenge election results. So that's a big one. On the front page, well, of course, you know that you'll always get to hear a lot more after these kind of scenarios. Election held, winner declared, and then there will always be days after. That's Daily Times this morning.
Well, take a look at leadership. It seems as though the dailies have since maybe moved on from the Ekiti election, maybe, because there are lots of issues contending for attention in Nigeria. But, I mean, leadership stays on election matters, also touches on the Ekiti election. And you see SAN's CSOs to INEC, you must reject candidates who didn't participate in primaries. That's how leadership leads. And, it looks like there's a new culture, a new trend now. This, is it substitution or this placeholder? Yeah. I'm seeing things that I didn't think.
Because even some running mates that have not been picked are not particularly cast in stone. So you're wondering what's going to happen. How does this relate to the new INEC guidelines?
Well, they have a window to substitute candidates. So politicians, they see that, they say, okay, we'll play the game.
But there's a process to having those candidates
But it's a new era shaping
so
the 2023 election. Absolutely.
We'll see.
Yeah,
okay.
Interesting.
A couple of writers, really, very interesting times we're in. INEC can't promote impunity, legality. That's coming from CSOs. Case of Lawa and Akpabio, clear violation of electoral acts. That's coming from SANs. Machina insists on legal action over Yobe North APC senatorial ticket. Akpabio's name will be on the ballot. That's coming from his aide. No report suggests the names were forwarded to us. Guess who? INEC. So different issues in the mix. Of course, the Ekiti poll makes its way to the front page as well. After landslide, Oyebanji promises to work for Ekiti people. And there are quotes from major stakeholders in that election. This one also, on top of the nameplate, Kwankwaso will not be Obi's running mate, NNPP. And this sad one next to that one, terrorists killed 3 worshippers, abduct 46.
Yet again.
Yet again.
And
Leadership.
from leadership, let's take a look at News Direct. It leads with a big and growing concern that I wish I didn't have to read this morning, but I must. Fuel scarcity, long queues worsen in Ogun, Oyo, Oshun, others, as price hits 300 naira per litre. Yes, you heard that, 300 naira per litre. And we hear that from, the southwest, that southwest corridor, it's crawling into Lagos. And the advice is that, commuters, motorists should stock up on fuel. 300 naira per litre. We wonder what's going to happen, how this is going to turn out. And what exactly is responsible for this?
Stocking up, panic buying, the queues. This actually started in Abuja, I think 2 months ago. It never really went away. So I think it really crawled from the FCT all the way around. And it's mind-boggling. First, it's the FCT. I mean, it's just a stone's throw from the seat of power. And you had persistent fuel scarcity. And it just beats my imagination. Why can't we solve that?
And if you look at Daily Times 20, 30, 40 years ago, you see these kind of headlines.
Same stories.
And you ask yourself, what is going on with this country?
Are we going to exit that part of Nigeria's history?
Dear Nigeria.
We wonder. Okay, let's look at the top corner of News Direct. Just 2 more stories before we exit. Tinubu returns to Lagos amid jubilation by party supporters. Yes, that was one of the big stories from yesterday.
Now, what was the talk about shutting a certain bridge or a certain part of the road?
That's how jubilant the supporters were.
No, a lot of people were complaining, saying, why can't I move? Why can't I go about my business? Imagine I had an emergency. Why did you have to cordon off this area?
Story of our lives. Story of our lives.
I don't get it.
Economy doesn't matter to this kind of folks. Economy is secondary.
Well, I guess those are the most important stories from News Direct this morning. We hope to tell better stories later. Maukwe?
Yeah, hope.
Well, the Abuja Inquirer is the lead story here. And look at this, 200 billion naira IGR. FCTA fears 62 billion naira shortfall. Performing SDAs to get 2.5% of earnings. Plans to rival Lagos in disarray. So looks like their plans have been upended, or they're up in the air, whichever way you want to look at it. But I shouldn't be laughing about this because this is the city I live in. This is our federal capital territory. And if they're going to have a 62 billion naira shortfall, it certainly is going to have implications for, the running of the FCT. And in recent times, the FCT has seen an explosion in population. A lot of the suburbs, a lot of the rural communities, and there are rural communities in the FCT, have now been affected. Population explosion, infrastructure is needed there. So a lot of work really needs to be done. But page 3 might give you details. Maybe there are also the implications there. You might want to read the story there. Look at this. What we're doing to boost power supply to Abuja, others. That's according to the AEDC. So if you live here in Abuja or you're under the AEDC, because I know it also supplies a few other states contiguous to the FCT, you might want to pick up a copy of the Abuja Inquirer to find out what the AEDC is doing for you. You have a number of other stories just beneath this. Look at this one. APB trails rotten chicken, beef smuggled from Gariki market. The story is on page 5 of the paper. I've always wondered about frozen foods, Really, one has to be very circumspect in terms of the sort of frozen foods that we consume. And, if there's anyone checking, to be sure that those foods, especially with the frequent power outages, diesel, heating, God knows what price. And right now, what do you have? Fuel scarcity. The problems are a lot, gentlemen. Sometimes there's so much you just can't help but chuckle. When you cannot cry, what do you do? But some Silver lining here in the paper, something to cheer a little. Otiono, Nigerian academic, named director at Canadian University. So that's someone doing us proud out there. Celebrated Nigerian author, writer, poet, and essayist Dr. Undoka Otiono has been appointed the next director of Canada's Carleton University Institute of African Studies, effective from July the 1st. So something to cheer a little at least. Let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Yeah, sometimes it just sounds as though everyone for himself, God for us all. Wow. I'm just trying to see if I could find some good news on the front page of New Telegraph, but I have to look harder. But if you look at the big lead here, IATA to Nigeria, withholding foreign airlines 187.1 billion naira, not acceptable. Says country tops others in trapped funds, indict Zimbabwe, Algeria, Ethiopia. Blocked funds liable for airfare increase. Really? I don't know who they ascribe this to though, but I think we need to interrogate this because, okay, what happened before these funds were being blocked? Where the fees had they always been high? So what are they telling us? Maybe they publish where the taxes and who takes what. Maybe that might help.
Let's see.
You know, so, but I don't know about blocked funds liable. Maybe a contributing factor, but maybe not the sole factor, if probably that's what they're trying to tell us. Above this lead story, banks, others generate 91.18 billion naira VAT in 15 months. It appears banks are just immune to whatever crisis is going on in the country. They're always buoyant, declaring huge profits, whether it's before tax, after tax. Yeah, because they keep charging you card maintenance fee, all kinds of fee, transaction. If you send any internet, the fee comes with it.
But they're not immune to the
If you step
inflation.
into the banks, maybe there's a fee attached to that too. These days, you just...
But they're not immune to the, inflation in the economy. I hear they're cutting down the number of hours of operations now.
But they say they're carrying humongous profits, much more than several
Other
regular
aspects
companies.
of the economy.
Yeah,
Perhaps
and they're not
we should turn our
manufacturing.
searchlight on banking
They
sector.
don't even do the basic banking stuffs of which we see other countries happen, the loan facilities, the show industry thrive, so many things going on. But, oh, look at this. I found this. I hope it's good. Nigeria, US dislodge Algeria in gas export to Spain. Maybe that's the closest you can get to something sharing on the front
what
page.
are the returns from there? I think we should share with caution.
They say we have a lot of gas, in the country. So if we can take advantage of that, now that Russia is having challenges with Europe in terms of gas, what are we doing about ours? So
we're like the new bride now. Oil and
Are
gas.
we really? If they won't start fighting over themselves in this country to ensure this even happens.
We hope not. Goodness, take a look at The Guardian. I'm actually also searching for something to cheer you up, really. And you see this picture on the front page, two pictures actually. The one on top shows a centenarian. She's said to be 105 years old, voting during that election. And it just gives me hope. I am motivated seeing this centenarian who actually believes in Nigeria and wants to see Nigeria work. So she went out there to cast her ballot. They say she's 105 years old. I'm not sure. She should be, she might be, but clearly she's aged. So something to cheer about. So you're just 20 what, 30 what, 40 what, you're giving up on Nigeria. Come off it.
Some of them are already in Canada, my friend. Some are going to
No, but the
other countries
centenarian
tomorrow.
hasn't given up on Nigeria, so why should
good.
you, Chamberlain?
It's good. Well, I have.
Not Chamberlain. I'm talking about, the people, you know who. But, the big story there is quite different. Auto firms' stocks crash as Nigerians spend 4 trillion naira on Tokumbo in 10 years. This has been on for a while. And, the riders just tell the story. And I should just point this out, that it's actually more expensive to import cars. So people still go through that anyway because it looks like that's the better option for them.
Because of the standards.
We need to have this conversation, really. Just to mention this one, just there, FG has 2,000 abandoned, underused properties nationwide, says Wike.
FG.
FG. That's The Guardian.
2,000. Apparently, there's very little to churn. Okay, I'm looking for, in fact, I don't know what the word is now, for something to cheer on the Daily Trust, but there is nothing to cheer.
Oops.
And the big story says, more woes as aviation fuel, diesel prices soar. Jet A1 hits 815 naira per litre, and diesel nears 800 naira per litre. Looks like there is more crisis from the aviation sector. It may be long in coming. It may even be very nearer than we think. We hope that they're not going to down tools yet again. You know, the last time they were going to suspend operations pending when the crisis over Jet A1 field would be resolved. But look at it now, 815 naira per litre. The other time it was hovering somewhere between 600 naira per litre, and this was just weeks ago.
I must quickly commend one operator. We actually left before scheduled time.
It's 25 now.
Yes,
This morning.
I'm told that that's not an accurate figure. It's 825 naira per litre.
Wow.
Additional 200 naira from the last time.
Just
That took out my commendation.
Nobody reins in this thing. It's just, these guys are lords unto themselves, isn't it?
And inflation spikes as a result as transport cost rises, banks, others cut down services. How federal government can intervene. That's attributed to an expert. Now look at the bottom strip of a Daily Trust newspaper. It's a sad one coming from Bielsa. Pregnant woman, corps member, 5 others drown in Bielsa boat crash. That's it from the Daily Trust newspaper. Malkwe.
Buki, it's interesting that you have a different Daily Trust from the one I have here. I mean, the headlines are the same, but the picture there, you know, is very different, and they tell very different stories. This one is about scavengers, and these scavengers, look at them. Can you see the crowd there? They are right here in the city. They were at a building site trying to see what they could find, to make a living. That's basically what they were there to do. And when you look at the crowd of people, it tells a story all by itself about what is currently happening within the cities. But look at the Vanguard this morning. Ekiti poll, Segun Oni rejects outcome as APC taunts PDP. Oni won't concede, campaign spokesman. That's on the front page. PDP's distant third position shows Nigerians have rejected them. That's according to APC. I thought it was to be magnanimous in victory. Well, what do I know? Victorious Oyebanji woos Oni, others. His victory, good omen for 2023. That's according to Buhari, Fayemi Adamu. Fayemi's leadership made it possible for APC to retain Ekiti. That's according to Tinubu. PDP candidate Kolawole concedes. Prosecute Ekiti vote buyers in 7 days. That's according to Serap. Serap tells INEC. Situation room decries sighting of polling units in private residences. I thought this had changed, but evidently it hasn't. How Oyebanji APC broke re-election jinx. That story is on page 15 of the paper. They also have these stories. Federal government's borrowing from bonds market declined 73.6% to 600 billion as equities skyrocket 1,901% to 1.1 trillion naira. So for those of you that have also written off the Nigerian Stock Exchange, hey, it seems to be on the rebound somehow. Higher interest rates to return, that's according to analysts, so it could have implications. But look at this one. I don't even know which one of them to take because they're both sad. Meningitis hits 18 local government areas in Jigawa, kills 65, that's there. 19 die in Niger or your auto crashes. So while insecurity is a thing, there's also the thing of health and safety to also, keep an eye on. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Well, so there you go. That wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Of course, we'd like to hear from you about what you think of any of the headlines or what you think is going on out there that is worth the attention of every other Nigerian. In the meantime, we're back in a moment. Stay with us.
It's a day after the Ekiti governorship election, The results have been announced, with the All Progressives Congress candidate, Mr. Biodun Oyebanji, emerging winner after polling a total of 187,057 votes ahead of his closest contenders, Mr. Segun Oni of the Social Democratic Party, who polled 82,211 votes, and the People's Democratic Party candidate, Otumba Kolawole, who polled 67,457 votes. At the country home of the governor-elect at Ikogosi, it's a celebratory mood as supporters and members of the APC storm his residence to felicitate with him on his victory at the poll, with Governor Kayode Fayemi, the chairman of the Governors Forum, Atiku Bagudu, and Governor Mohammed Badr of Jigawa State leading the entourage. The governors take turns to congratulate the governor-elect.
We thank again the people of Ekiti State for recognizing the contribution of the APC-led administration in the state and so rewarding us with the result yesterday. We equally thank the leadership of our political party.
Mr. Oyebanji is then presented the official INEC results.
It is an honor and a privilege to finally hand over the original results, declaration of results from EC40 or EC8D, which is the collation and summary of results from local government areas in the 2022 Ekiti State governorship election, to the governor-elect, Mr. Abiodun Abayomi Oyebanji.
And in an explicit manner, he expresses his gratitude to Governor Kayode Fayemi for his support. Then he goes for a change of clothes before giving his acceptance speech.
We are grateful for the privilege you have given to us to bear your sacred mandate at this crucial time in history. We recognize that on October 16, 2022, when, by the grace of God, we will be inaugurated into office, we are expected to immediately start to build on the legacies of those who came before us and honorably govern our state in trust for the generations coming after us. It is a duty we campaign for and accept with all solemnity and responsibility. In keeping with our covenant with you, we will work together with you to keep Ekiti working.
In the coming days, power is expected to change hands in Ekiti State, and with a new administration coming on board, the people of Ekiti State look forward to more dividends of democracy. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Well, we're going to go ahead and get some reactions for the just concluded, Ekiti elections, because INEC has since declared the winner. Of course, there are more perspectives to that. So we've got three gentlemen joining us this morning to give us their perspective on what they think transpired for the elections. Ben Oguntunashe, he joins us from Ekiti. He is the chairman strategy committee for Segun Oni campaign. We also have Honorable Taiwo Olatubosu, director media and publicity, BO campaign. He's a former deputy speaker of Ekiti State. And then you see Ariyo Dare Atoye, who is the executive director, Adopt a Goal initiative, also joining us from Ekiti. He was part of those who were observing the election. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Mr. Oguntunashe, let me start with you. Yes, we've seen several headlines about what your candidate is going to do or has said or done about the just concluded elections, but let's start from you giving us your impression about how the elections played out. What do you think?
Well, I think, good morning, Shambalin. What I take of the election is that it was not free, it was not fair, and we witnessed a horrendous collapse of our institutions. The two institutions charged with managing the election, I'm talking of INEC and the security agencies, they all failed. They were seriously compromised. And what we witnessed was an electoral bazaar, so commercialized that it does not reflect the real attitude of the Ekiti people. The election was very, very bad. There was also a lot of violence that accompanied the election. And I just wonder, why do we need to deploy such a large contingent of policemen and security agencies if they cannot hold down violence when it is occurring right in their presence? Vote buying is a criminal offense. When they see it happening, you even caught them. They were very lackadaisical in their attitude towards it. They never really cared. So what was the need for their presence? And then INEC positioned their boxes and all their equipment in a way that totally compromised the election. This election that just took place in Ekiti State lacked integrity.
Could you give us specifics as to some of these generic scenarios that you have painted? Any particular case in point?
All right, we'll begin. How much money did all the police officers that came for the election, how much did they collect? The DIG, we know how much he was given as his allowance for coming to do election. Why should the police, the DIG of the police, the AIGs and so, why should they receive money from parties when they are coming to do what was clearly the official duties? That is the start of corruption to begin with.
Then, do you have it on good authority? Did you see any of the AIGs and who gave them what? Which party gave them what?
We produce that in court. I don't want to say it on air. We do have it on authority. But if you don't, I don't want to. I will not produce the evidence here, but you find out about the evidence much later. What about a guy called Metilo in Ekiti, who was raiding houses, raiding everywhere, carrying ballot boxes all over the place? What about all the videos that are in circulation about people alleging vote buying and other things like that? There's a lot of evidence to show that this election was a charade.
All right, Honorable Atubosun, what do you think?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. My thinking and position on the issue of the last Saturday election was that the election went free, fair, and was credible enough, and it actually reflects the popular opinion of the people of Ekiti, the electorates. And in performing their franchise, they freely expressed that in support of the candidate that they believe we make them proud and we deliver the goods. And don't forget that the sterling quality of the party in government led by JKF is a factor in this case. And by that popular voting for APC and the BAU as our candidate has given a good verdict of the acceptability of the leadership of APC, particularly in the area of good governance and outstanding performance in the area of infrastructure. But I listen to what Big Ben is saying here. My own is that if they are coming with face-saving excuses now, I am not surprised. I'm not surprised in the sense that you cannot expect an emergency assemblage of people within a period of 2-3 weeks or 1 month to come around and believe that they will be the one to determine what the people of Ekiti will do with their votes. And I don't know where they're getting this overbloated idea of their strength and that it's making them that they are as popular as the APC in Ekiti State. But let me expressly say that I do not witness any vote buying anywhere. And it is alleging that the onus of proof is on him. And we are here to let people know that Ekiti people, they are enlightened, they are knowledgeable, and they know the process of election, and they understand the dictates of the rules of the game. And I believe we should respect them by not taking them for granted and by not disparaging or taking their intelligence for granted on the media. And being an elderly person, I expect that Big Ben should come with facts and figures.
All right.
Just like you asked him now. It is surprising that he could not even mention specifics because he's saying that they will have to present that in the court of law. Well, the process allows for that. And I think it's a good thing if they have to meet us in court.
All right, then. So, Dari, what did you see?
Good morning, Chamberlain, and thank you for having me. I would say that I think the election was an improvement on what we saw in Anambra State, especially with the issue of technology, the beavers recording significant improvement. I will also acknowledge the fact that this election witnessed a scandalous level of vote buying. It is not a report that people have to hear from me alone. When you look at the media, I watch with incidents, including people who even shamelessly displaying their photographs and videos, acknowledging the fact that indeed they got money for selling their votes. In addition to that, I will also must acknowledge the reported cases of violence in some places. For instance, in my local government, I'm from Ekiti State, I also voted and observed. You saw that, for instance, in Elawe, Ekiti, I think a reported case of a ballot box being snatched away. Now, overall, that's a difference in entirely whether those cases are sufficient enough to undermine the credibility of the election. It's another thing that will definitely be evaluated in days ahead. But I would like to say this. I think what we saw before this election and on election day usually attributed to the desperation of the politicians. And, there is always an attempt to win at all costs. And we saw that the pre-election violence, even though we know we had a large deployment of security agencies. Now, these security agencies, unfortunately, in one of the videos, for instance, saw people were asking, why did you allow them to take away this ballot box? But again, somebody was saying, quickly called my attention that the people who came, they came with guns. The security agencies deployed at the polling booths we're not allowed to carry guns based on, I think, the law. So that's another thing probably maybe for a review in the future. But by and large, when you look at this election, I believe that there are a lot of lessons to learn in the course of this election. And I believe that INEC will also must now insist further in terms of the placement of the ballot boxes. In some area, we saw compliance in terms of trying to guarantee the sacredness or the sanctity of, the secrecy, because we operate an open secret system, the secrecy of the ballots in areas where there have been this too open display of it. Some people, display in such a manner that the voting pattern could be compromised. Some vigilant voters actually resisted that and said, look, you have to place it properly. In some areas, it was compromised in such a way that those who are doing the vote buying were able to substantially monitor those who are were voting. It's a shame that the issue of vote buying is now become a serious cost on our democracy. It's a huge cost. Vote buying is now a huge cost on our democracy, in the sense that, Chamberlain, 2 billion naira will give you 200,000 votes at 10,000 naira. Now, I tweeted something a few days, yesterday, and I said that the candidate who's likely to win the 2023 general election is likely to get a minimum of 15 million votes. And at 10,000 naira, that is going to be at 150 billion naira. That is the sad stage of our country. My only worry is just that the issue of vote buying, there are penalties stipulated in the Electoral Act for vote buying. It may not be a substantial ground for nullification of election or making making an election to be discarded or something like that.
Let me take this back to
provision in the Electoral Act for
let me take this back to Mr. Ogutwase. Major points you have raised there, and you've commended the process in terms of technology and all of that, but sadly we're talking about vote buying. At this point in our democracy, we've come quite a long way. So, Mr. Ogutwase, just to perhaps speak more on this issue of vote buying, because we need to learn lessons. We're building up to Osun and the big elections. Just how did this play out? Because for Honorable Olatomoso, you said he didn't witness any. So for the places you say there was vote buying, how sophisticated was it? How exactly did they perpetrate this?
The mechanism is like this. The polling, where you cast your vote, the cubicle is placed in a way that is visible to all the observers. They ask them to look at it, so they see who you are going to vote for. A way they recognize who you are voting for is the location of the parties on the ballot paper. If you are close to the top, they know you are voting for APC. You are at the bottom, they know you are voting for SDP and so on and like that. Then they display it for people to see. Then they fold it and then go and drop it in the box. The agent that is there, the money agent, then writes down the name of the person who has just voted and who has just voted for them. And then they direct the person to go to a particular location away from the polling booth to go and collect their money. This is how they do it. Now, I went to some polling units and I asked the security men that the way these states are positioned compromised the integrity of this election. And also, the security men, what are you doing about these people who have deflated their ballots? But what they say is that they have done their best, but that's the way the people want it. So in effect, there was not really any effort made by the security people and by any people to actually hold down these vote buying tendencies. They did not do anything about that. That is the shame of the election.
Well, Mr. Ogutuase, was your party involved in vote buying?
We did not give money out to anybody. Because we didn't believe in giving money to people.
Okay.
Where I was, we did not give any money.
But you don't know about other places because the word out there is it was highest bidder. Some were offering 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, and eventually the highest bidder took the day. So do you know about others? Can you vouch for other polling units or other members of your party that they didn't engage in see and buy, as they call it?
I am not aware we did that. I'm the chairman of strategy committee. Who are going to do it, I will know. I didn't know about that. This see and buy was peculiar to one particular party, and everybody in Ekiti State are fully aware of it. The bid rate was 10,000 naira per vote. Everybody in Ekiti State is aware of this.
Well, which party is that?
The APC people.
Well,
they are the people who had money.
We have the APC here to respond to that. So let me go back to Honorable Olatibosu. And I'd like to pick it up from the placement of the ballot box. And this issue has been raised time and again. Did you have concerns about the placement? It's meant to be an open, secret ballot. But from what I even witnessed myself, the boxes were placed in such a way that others can see how you voted. You can just easily fold your paper the other way and then show before you put it in the box. Did you have concerns about that? And perhaps that might have also aided vote buying. That's for you, Honorable.
I think the network is bad, yeah. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Honorable Olatibosu, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay,
I can hear you loud and clear.
You can go ahead with your response.
Listening to our it's quite. It's like we were insulting the.
So we lost the beginning of what you were saying. So if you could just recap for us. Oh, it looks like the connection is failing on us. We'll come back to Honorable in a moment, but let me go back to Mr. Ariyodare Atoye. This is an election that we had hoped would paint a picture of what to expect in 2023, essentially, with the technology, but this issue of vote buying. I know we've talked a lot about this. A lot of the work is perhaps in the hands of the political parties first, who are set to induce the voters, but who do you think should have done what during that election?
Well, I want to say that I think the functions streamlined and defined for every institution and agency involved in the Ekiti governorship election. The police force, the army, INEC, and the politicians themselves, the electorate, all have one role or the other to play. The electorate were meant to come to cast their vote. The INEC officials were meant to ensure that they comply with rules and regulations guiding the election. The police officers, the soldiers were meant to protect, the people and ensure that everything, runs smoothly. And also the politicians were meant to ensure that the election was not disrupted, either compromised. But like I said, we did something before the election, I think, which was covered by channels. We went ahead and did this campaign on the issue of vote buying. Now, I realized that. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, it wasn't sufficient enough to tell the voters not to sell their vote. Not sufficient enough. It's important that we are able to put cost to that vote. And Chamberlain and my brother in the studio, I came up with this ingenious calculation. I think in 2015, we did a very solid campaign in Osun 4 years ago, which we are still going to return to Osun. And we put the cost of a vote at, currently, the minimum wage is 30,000, and we put at 1.44 million naira. Now, the whole reason why we decided to let the voters to know that the cost of one vote is 1.44 million naira, for them to understand that the 5,000, 10,000 they are collecting is actually worthless. How did we arrive at 1.44 million naira as the cost of a vote? Is when you calculate the minimum wage is 30,000 naira, the baseline, and you multiply it by 48 months that a politician will spend in the office. And that is the minimum you are expected as a Nigerian of a voting age to have benefited, either by way of employment. So it gives 1.44 million. So it's what we've seen as a pattern of enslavement and a serious cost on our democracy. So what we need to do is to deepen this campaign, because I realized that, and we also saw instances of people who rejected vote buying, because when we were in the market, we told some of the people, and they are listening to us. They listened to the calculation. Some of them made some resolution that they're not going to sell their vote, that is worthless. Actually, based on the way we explained to them.
All right, Dari. Just pardon me. We need to go to break, but we'll return and continue our focus on the Ekiti elections. That will be in just a moment. So, gentlemen, we'll be right back.
Adjudged to be largely peaceful, Saturday's governorship election in Ekiti State is not without its flaws, and that's according to foreign and local observers who participated actively in the poll. For Yaga Africa, the electoral umpire needs to adopt a more transparent information analysis of permanent voter cards collected, as it also asks voters to take a further step of holding politicians accountable.
Yaga Africa commends the people of Ekiti State for their resilience and commitment to non-violent elections. We encourage voters to sustain their participation in the electoral process beyond the elections by holding political parties and candidates accountable for their campaign promises. Yaga Africa encourages INEC to uphold the principles of transparency by publishing the total number of permanent voters' cards collected in Ekiti State on its website.
In his assessment, the British Deputy High Commissioner says the poll went well and more could be done to check voter inducement ahead of 2023.
I was in 16 polling units. Our teams were across the whole of Ekiti, and I think we saw a peaceful election. We certainly saw an election where the materials from INEC arrived early. INEC were organised. I think we saw the BVAs performing perhaps better than they have in the past, and I think that's very encouraging. It's really important that any culture of vote buying is addressed, and ahead of the 2023 elections, people feel that their vote is their vote, and indeed it can count for them, and there shouldn't be a need to buy a vote because the choice they make is the important choice for the future of their state and their country.
The citizens on the streets of Ekiti rate this election high in conduct and security, and they seek the best of performance from the incoming governor.
For the bow, as we call him, I would like to focus his attention on, giving youth employment. And one of the youth in the state, and this is the problem we are passing through here, we youth, we need employment. We see a lot of youth, roaming about, a lot of ladies, they have nothing to do. They're roaming about, no job.
We want him to be so focused on security, because I think Dr. Kayode Fayemi has laid a very good foundation. All the killings kidnapping that we are experiencing in other states. Those things are not even discovered in Ekiti State because of the foundation. So we want Aoyebanji to improve on the legacy of Dr. Kayode Fayemi.
With the elections now over, the governor-elect is expected to ensure that he leads the state as a united entity to actualize its full potential.
Congress, APC, secured the majority of votes and
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We're still reviewing the Ekiti governorship elections 2022. We're taking reactions from main actors in that election. We still have with us Mr. Ben Oguntoashi, Chairman, Strategic Committee, Sheguni Campaign Organization. We also have Mr. Taiwo Olatubosun, Director, Media and Publicity, BAO Campaign, and Mr. Ario Dari Atoye, Executive Director at Dr. Goal Initiative, who just put a staggering cost to one vote, if you do the calculations in terms of vote buying, at 1.44 million. But now I'd like to go to Mr. Dari Olatubosun. You said earlier that you didn't get any report of vote buying. But during the election, I wonder if you watched Channels Television's coverage. Just an hour before the police, the DIG, Mr. Kokumo, denied getting any report of vote buying as you have done. The EFCC arrested certain individuals in the video that we have now been showing since the beginning of the program. Isn't it curious for you, and are you not concerned that the DIG denied getting any report of vote buying, even though the EFCC had made an arrest, you know, in the mix of the whole process? Aren't you concerned? Shouldn't the government security agencies have been working together?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said earlier, where I voted, there was no issue of vote buying there, and the process.
Mr. Olatubosun, the audio through to him is frozen yet again. We'll try to address that. But let me now come to you, Mr. Ben Oguntoashi. You talk about vote buying and the concern about how rampant it was and all of that. But there are reports that indeed your candidate is broke, and that's why he was unable to indulge in vote buying himself. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't think we should use that as a yardstick. The perception or the assumption that somebody is broke, we cannot use, because it is the direction we actually ought to be moving our democracy is in the direction of not doing vote buying. But if we are now trying to find negative characterization for somebody not to vote buying as being the consequence of being poor or broke and so on, then we are not helping this democracy, because we know the consequences.
I believe it is necessary.
We know the
financial wherewithal to indulge in vote buying he would have, wouldn't he?
I don't believe Sheguni would have. Sheguni is somebody who is very high on moral and on morality and on ethics. He believes in service to the people with a lot of passion. He does not believe in all this inducement. As a matter of fact, he works so hard to make sure that inducement was not part of what we do. And that is why we championed the campaign against the Boko Sebe and all those other negative attributes of vote buying. So I can pursue all of that. We actually championed the campaign against that in the Trying to tell the people that it's more important to follow your conscience so that you can get your freedom than for you to be induced with money. Because we all know, if whatever you pay today, the 10,000 naira that people collect, it does not guarantee that pensioners are going to be paid their gratuity. It does not guarantee that employees are going to pay their salary, the civil servants, and so on and so forth. It does not guarantee infrastructure. And we have seen evidence of how terrible this can be on our politics since this vote buying attribute was actually introduced by first AC, then APC, and so on, that the people actually have been doing it extensively since 2014.
Let's return to Mr. Olatubosun. Mr. Olatubosun, are you back now?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I was saying is that all the security agencies, the electoral agencies, I expect that they should work together in the real sense of it to ensure that we improve on our electoral process. But the point I've made here, which I wish to emphasize on, is that we do not involve in vote buying. And for those that were arrested, possibly I cannot identify those people. And from what I read, I learned that it was the SDP people that actually got involved in that. And let me say this, even before election, they raised money openly.
Hold on, you said it was the SDP people that indulged in vote buying. Do you have any evidence? I thought you said that there was no vote buying where you voted.
That's what I'm saying.
So where did you get your information?
That is talking, I'm saying that from the analysis made by Big Ben, it shown that they had a mind of doing things like that, because the way he analyzed it, what happened in his word, the way it was carried out, it means that he knew about those things. But as far as our party is concerned, I cannot analyze what he analyzed because we were not involved. And there was no report of any form of vote buying because we don't have the money. Where do we get such money? And that is the truth. And for a party that has campaigned around 177 wards in Ekiti, you cannot compare such a party with a party that is not having a structure. And you cannot compare such a party with a party that came up within the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And you cannot compare such a party with a party that you cannot specifically have their manifestos of what they actually told people. And again, let me say this. When I said it's an afterthought and a way to cover up their failed over-bloated strength everywhere in Ekiti. We have a government in place in Ekiti that have touched life in the area of infrastructural development and good governance. And these are very, very important. And people should come to the reality of the advancement and improvement in our electoral process rather than relying on other backdoor approach, which used to be when they participated in elections. Again, I ask, which election have they ever won? Which election? Let's be very honest with ourselves. And the idea of people just coming in a day or two and want to stampede Ekiti to do their wishes and biddings cannot work. I believe Ekiti people have spoken and freely spoken. Each of us has a vote, and our vote is equal to each other. You have a vote, Big Ben, I have a vote. Likewise, an artisan of the street has a vote. A farmer has a vote. So, and they speak for themselves. They are free. People are free to express their mind. People are free to perform their franchise. And if you want to impose the interest of our individual on them, then it's like we are the one trying to cause crisis. But each of vote is not enough for you or for your party to accept that the popular vote in a democracy rules the day. And our party, the credibility of our Ekiti people, again, they want one of their own. They want a homegrown person. And maybe we are not getting the language of Ekiti people this time around. And they want continuity. Continuity is not just in a way. That is what we have never had in Ekiti State. And for the first time, the Ekiti people has broken the genes through their votes. And we should.
Well, it does look like Honorable Taiwo Olatuboso is frozen again. But let's go to Mr. Ariodare Atoye, who is the Executive Director of Adopt a Goal Initiative. Well, we saw in that video, I don't know if you were able to see the clip, pictures of EFCC officials getting involved. So it did look like this vote buying was anticipated. It would seem that since the last maybe 2 or 3 election cycles in Ekiti, this has now become a very troubling issue. And we've now seen the involvement of EFCC officials. How effective would you say their introduction was?
You are not hearing.
Hello, Mark, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you
I can hear you loud and clear. If you can hear me, Please go ahead.
Hear the question.
Okay, I was asking about the introduction of EFCC officials. I mean, vote buying has become rather a worrying concern in so many election cycles right now. I think it was one of the worrisome aspects for many people in the Ekiti elections. So with the introduction of EFCC officials now in the polls, how effective would you say that they coming into the elections have been?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oops. Looks like there's a connection problem between Abuja and Zoom. Maybe I should send this back to Lagos. I don't know if any of the other guests can hear me. Mr. Oguntuashe, can you hear me?
I'm not sure they can, but let's try and see if it works from here. Dari, for you, she was asking, has the introduction of EFCC officials helped in any way to prevent vote buying?
Chamberlain, I like that question. Before coming to Ekiti, I had a meeting with the EFCC. The chairman was not around. I met with the secretary of the commission with our theme and the coalition of other CSCs. And we tried to tell them that they have to come to Ekiti to make their presence count and probably to effect necessary arrests. We've seen in some videos that some persons were arrested. The only way to make a statement is for the EFCC to ensure a diligent prosecution of the people arrested in line with the Electoral Act. And because we have Osun coming and we have the general elections coming, and EFCC must act. And also, we are also going to return to Abuja and have another meeting with the EFCC based on some of the things we've seen to make further suggestions. Because I recall that in the meeting we had with the EFCC, they also asked for our own suggestions, which we are going to make available to them. They do not have the personnel to be able to cover every polling unit, every ward, every local government. And we don't expect that because they want to get involved in the election, they have to go on the recruitment drive. But there is a way out which we are going to discuss with the commission, probably to working with volunteers and how to effect necessary arrests.
Let me add this to your response. Just hang on. The chairman of INEC, while he was speaking with stakeholders in the Ekiti, I think your different groups were there as well, on this question of vote buying. He says, quote, clearly, vote buying is a threat to our electoral democracy. To discourage the practice, we changed the configuration of our polling units to bring the ballot boxes closer to the voting cubicles and also banned the use of mobile phones and photographic devices by voters while in the voting cubicle. And then they also went ahead, he said they went ahead and collaborated with the EFCC and ICPC. So did you see this change that INEC spoke about regarding the ballot boxes on the day?
Not exactly. I would say, yeah, in some areas, but in most areas where this vote buying took place, of course. One thing is for INEC to give its own directives. Another thing is for people to ensure the vigilance and some of the officials of INEC to ensure that this order was carried out effectively. Sometimes some of those people come to some of these local areas intimidated. They have their fears, they have their concerns, and you see, in an atmosphere of violence sometimes, or the threat of violence, sometimes it's difficult. I think what we ought to have seen is the political parties actually also insisting that those rules must be complied with. Like I said, in some areas, yes, but in a lot of areas that I saw, there was that compromise.
Okay, Mr. Oguntuashe, well, you heard Honorable Latiboso say, no way. He pushed back on some of the allegations that you have made. But the question is, can you then substantiate some of these allegations about vote buying for the APC, of which you accuse them of, when you go to court?
We will do that. We have compiled our evidence, and we are going to present this evidence before the court. We are going to present to the court video evidence, oral evidence, and all electronic evidence, all kinds of evidence that we have gathered from the field. In fact, places where during the election the posters of BAO were all displayed all over the place during election, which again the electoral all of these are going to make available at the court.
But
the reason...
He also says that your candidate couldn't have just shown up days before the election and expect to bamboozle the people because their own candidate, he says, is a homeboy and that you didn't stand a chance.
I have tried to refrain from engaging Honorable Atuboso in the kind of verbal assault that he tried to launch at me to provoke with me. Because because he made a statement, for example, that these people never won election. I wonder how he got to serve as Commissioner for Information under Sheguni, who has now said never won an election. Now, his pushback, he knows deep down within him that it is very, very faulty. He's talking of Biodo Ebanje as an homeboy. Nobody denies that. But you see, more homeboy than Sheguni is. That is the question that he continually tried to avoid raising. I don't like this whole idea of disparaging ourselves because things are either not for us or against us. I've been trying to avoid that. But he knows that deep down, he's not telling the truth. I don't want to engage him in any verbal war here.
Honorable Atuboso, clearly, that sounds like you biting the fingers that fed you.
Has SDP ever won election in Ekiti? Big Ben, he's not...
What about the man behind the SDP? You served under him, didn't you, as he just told us?
Commissioner for Information. Has SDP ever won election in Ekiti State? As the SDP came on about 1 month or 2 months ago.
But Honorable
Atuboso,
it's not an amorphous body. There's a face behind the party. Isn't that the face? That's who the people go for.
In most cases, when the faces, the party is what people see on the ballot paper. That's the party, and that's very, very important. And I'm sorry to say this, is the truth of the matter. When you form an emergency party, leaving one party to another within a space of 6 months, everybody cannot just live with you. And you should not expect any magic. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. You can't compare SDP, a party that was concocted or brought together within the last 2 months. Let me cite, for example, some of the personalities in the party left APC about a week ago. And the truth of the matter is that what kind of magic do they want to perform? I know what I'm saying. But if Ben is taking it personal, I'm sorry about that. But the truth must be established. And what I'm saying in essence is that APC government in the Ekiti State has performed. 2, the credibility of the candidate is equally very important. And the people are very credible people. They want a party that is consistent. They are tired of having this, having that every 4-year rituals. And I'm not attacking any personality here. I'm only trying to let the people know that SDP was nowhere compared to what we have in APC as a party.
Well, Honorable Olatuboso.
Must be consistent.
Honorable Olatuboso, as Chamberlain said, it was the face behind the party, not necessarily the party, because you keep talking about how the SDP has not won an election. Indeed, the story was, before the election, was that Sheguni was the darling of the people of Ekiti because they thought that he was going to replicate the policies that he did while he was governor of the state earlier on in the civil service. And indeed, he was the man to beat in that election. And it was the vote buying that marred his chances.
Thank you very much. And when you compare that with 7.5 years of APC in Ekiti State, the gap will be, the people are there to judge. We're in the People's Parliament during that election, and I believe that if you look at the policy of Sheguni when he was governor, when you compare it to the physical changes, physical development under the administration of APC, you will know that what I'm saying that I'm still right. 2, when we talk about faces, let's take Ifaki for example. Sheguni is from Ifaki. We have a serving senator there. And we have other personalities there that are faces of APC there as well. So if they are talking about vote buying or they expect them to win without a structure and because it was the question you asked, that what were they expecting? Maybe they said they were expecting, they thought they would win, but they didn't win. And why didn't they win? It is because of the faces of people.
Did you see those videos making the rounds about people who sold their votes, accusing your party of buying their votes for 10,000 naira?
I did not say that. I did not say that. Honestly speaking, with all sense of honor, I did not say that. Our party we're not involved in vote buying. And honestly, I can't be everywhere. And as a matter of fact, what I've told you here is just the truth, nothing but the truth. We do not involve ourselves in vote buying. We could have gotten such money to do.
All right. Even though you say you're not everywhere, but you speak as though you're everywhere. All right, well, gentlemen, we have to thank you.
I can't be everywhere. That's what I say. I can't be everywhere.
Okay. Taiwo has said that SDP is a new party. I wonder how old APC was when they took over government from Jonathan's PDP in 2015. We need to go back to history and understand what we are talking about here.
All right. So on that note, we have to thank you all for coming on. Ben Oguntuanse is the chairman, Strategy Committee, Shegu Oni Campaign Organization. We had Honorable Taiwo Olatubosu, who is the Director of Media and Publicity, BAO Campaign, former Deputy Speaker of Ekiti State. And then Ariyo Dari Atoye, Executive Director of Adopt a Goal Initiative. He observed that election and also voted in the election. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll still talk about some political matters in a moment. Don't go away.
It's another decision-making day at the National Secretariat of the main opposition People's Democratic Party, as the 2023 presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is set to present his running mate to the leadership of the party. However, before he does that, the national chairman of the party makes some clarifications regarding the processes that culminated in the submission of 3 prospective running mates for the presidential candidate.
The committee recommended 3 names to us, and we transmitted those 3 names to the candidates. Contrary to all the speculations in the social media, the National Working Committee or the party didn't select one name for the candidate.
It's time for the PDP presidential candidate to unveil his running mate to the party, and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar mounts the podium, listing the qualification he considered before coming to a decision on his running mate.
In arriving at the decision, I held wild consultations with various stakeholders in our party. In these consultations, I made clear that my running mate would have the potential to succeed me at a moment's notice. That is a president in waiting.
Mr. Abubakar then proceeds to announce his running mate.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the ticket the next Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Governor Ifeanyi Arthur Okowa.
In his acceptance remarks, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta State pledges loyalty to the cause of the party to win the 2023 presidential election.
There is no doubt that there is a great work ahead of each and every one of us. The build-back process is going to be collective. And we are trusting that all our party members will want to be part of that story at the end of the day.
Having selected a presidential running mate, the People's Democratic Party, its presidential candidate, and the running mate now have the onerous task of uniting and mobilizing all their resources for the general elections in 2023.
Well, that's precisely what we're talking about, the fact that parties were struggling somewhat last week to try and meet the deadline given by INEC to submit the names of their vice presidential candidate. As we know it, it would seem that perhaps only the PDP, a major party, has been able to meet that deadline. A number of other parties submitted placeholders, the names of placeholders as the VP candidate for their party, hoping that in the substitution period, they would have concluded their consultations and they will be able to put the names of those whom they intend to really run with. But last week, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who is the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, named his vice presidential candidate, and he is former governor of current governor of Delta State, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. Now, it has not come without ripples, but those who argue for him say that there are very good reasons why he has been put on that ticket, and he certainly brings value on board. One of them is our guest this morning, Mr. Harunas Dandio Seidu, is a member of the PDP Board of Trustees and also the former chairman of PDP in Kebbi State. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's a pleasure.
I'm sure that, you know, your party was a little maybe worried about how it was going to approach this issue of vice presidential candidate. How relieved were you when eventually you were able to reach a conclusive decision as to, you know, who was going to be the vice presidential candidate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar?
Well, Mope, I don't think we were worried at any time in the process of coming out with the running mate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was in Adama. That is, it was a product of, it's a product of wide consultation within the PDP cycle, cutting across all the organs, the critical organs of the party and other critical stakeholders in the party.
Well, I use the word worried advisedly because I know that when you have capable names, when you have capable hands, and these parties are aware about who you intend to, about the fact that their names have been, you know, mentioned or have been brought on board, there'll be questions as to, you know, who you eventually settle for and how do you pacify the other people? How do you decide one over the other? This must have been a big question for you.
No, really, it were in a process of choosing one out of many or few. What needs to be done, and that is what was done, is to subject the personalities involved to rigorous scrutiny and being very dispassionate, objective, and coming out with a person that will add value not only to the ticket, but eventually, when the ticket succeeds, to governance generally. This is what transpired in the PDP.
Okay, we had the chairman of the PDP coming out to clarify certain things. He said 3 names were presented and that contrary to rumors, no one name was actually given. What made him give that particular statement?
No, perhaps it could be due to the speculations that were making rounds within the social media circle, and they thought it was the handiwork of one person or maybe the chairman of the party or National Working Committee, etc. No, there was a wide, in fact, I have never seen the widest of all consultations with regards to critical and pressing issues like the one that transpired last week. There was wide consultations within the organs of the party, the Board of Trustees, the National Working Committee, the former Governors Forum, the current Governors Forum, the former Ministers Forum, and what have you. That consultation produced the person of Ifeanyi Okowa, the current governor of Delta State. And the one consideration that was uppermost in the minds of all stakeholders in the PDP is to look at this person's come up with one of them that can add value, as we've already been saying. This, and people have heard why Atiku Abubakar Waziri Adama, when he was presented with the 3 persons that eventually made the list, and why he decided to pick Okowa to become the presidential vice presidential candidate for the PDP. And it was a very calm, rancor-free, and very informed decision that was made.
So this has been received by all members of your party with equanimity?
Yes.
There's nobody who is protesting?
No protesting. You see, Mope, in a normal situation of this nature, naturally, when you have the task of making a choice between equals or between people who are all qualified, except, of course, because of certain considerations that will add value to that process or that decision, you will have to choose one person. It's natural, certain things can come up, but they were very mild, and was in no time that has subsided. And so we are one single family, united, and put behind all certain
Is that the impression you would like to give, or that's what truly is? Because we have heard some disquiet in the sense, we know that there was a committee set up by the PDP. There are those who say that, oh, the party has gone against itself to produce this vice presidential candidate. That there were some committees that were set up within the PDP to deliberate on this issue of vice presidential candidate. In some instances, we even understand that those committees voted, and Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa was not the one who emerged the choice of those committees.
Mope, much as I don't want to delve into what had gone down, what has become a fast, but I would want to say, you see, there wasn't anything like maybe one person was voted or something like that. The committee that was saddled with this responsibility of coming up with the names of 3 persons to become the vice presidential ticket holder of the PDP, presented 3 names to the candidate, and the candidate made wider consultations and
are you saying that you don't know anything? Because on one hand, you say you don't want to, delve into things that are now in the past.
What is uppermost now is the issue of what value.
The reason why it is important, the reason why it's like as if you want to gloss over it and you just want to move forward.
It is not issue of glossing over
But this is what we heard happen. I mean, somebody was here last week to talk about the disquiet that the name of Senator Ifeanyi Okowa has raised. We've also seen statements released by people who, maybe under a different fora, under a different organization, but they're people whom we know had supported candidates of the PDP in the past, raised serious objection to the emergence of Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa as a vice presidential candidate. And these people are from his home base in the south of Nigeria.
Mope, I want to tell you this with all sense of responsibility, that the choice of Ifeanyi Okowa is a perfect choice. And the match of these 2 persons, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, Waziri Adama, and Ifeanyi Okowa, is a very perfect match. And definitely, Ifeanyi Okowa is going to add value to this ticket. You see, here is a person who, over the years, from the beginning of the Fourth Republic, has been part of the democratic process. As a councillor, as a local government chairman, as a commissioner, a senator, and becoming a governor, and a performing governor for that matter. You can see how he has transformed Delta states. You can see the youth empowerment program that he rolled out. you can see the kind of role he has played as a stabilizer, even beyond his state, was in the South region, and was in the national space of the PDP. You see, at all times, any time, if Okowa is given a role, he plays it well, he achieves. And this is a very common, cosmopolitan, knowledgeable, and very comforting as a person. So this has this kind of personality with a disposition to be broad-minded, to be very active and positive-minded whenever conversations, national conversations crop up in the party. You don't look at any other thing from the side, or certain people are aggrieved. Naturally, in a process of selection, whenever I compete for a particular thing, whenever maybe I mention in a particular process that will ultimately select me or another person, it is natural. Human beings are bound to think the way they do, and this is not peculiar to this very case. And in fact, I have never seen an overwhelming consensus and the acceptance of this choice that it has happened in the PDP. Yes.
So I think it's very important to state that, you know, we're not taking anything away from the person or the fact that the PDP has made its choice in vice presidential candidate, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. Some even say it is highly commendable in a place where, or in an atmosphere where parties are still putting placeholders and have not been able to finish their consultations. Some people will say that it is remarkable and commendable that the PDP has been able to conclude its own, and it leaves it with ample time to be able to deal with, you know, the disquiet or the grumblings that could come as a result of that choice. But what I seem to be hearing from you is that you're about to deny the existence, or to downplay, or to say that they almost do not exist, that there is wide consensus. From what we hear, it doesn't seem that way at all.
Mope, it's, I want to tell you very clearly that that choice, as far as the majority of the PDP adherents are concerned, as far as the minds of the critical stakeholders and those people who represent the key organs of the party are concerned,
are you saying, can I ask you?
The followership of the PDP
let me ask you,
is a very welcome decision.
Are you saying
and a perfect
are you saying
choice.
that there was no voting within the committee that was set up by the PDP to weigh in on the vice presidential candidate?
Mope, a process whereby a committee is given terms of reference to come up with 3 names. And there were a lot of considerations looking at the South as a very as a PDP control region, except one state, and even in that state, it is only the governorship status we've lost. But the PDP controls the largest structure of party followership in Cross Rivers. So what you have. South is a very critical and important.
All the names that we heard, you know, were on that list were from the South.
Yes, yes.
So
and
that's correct, right?
Yes, that was a consideration.
So we heard
and three people were presented. That is part of the terms of reference.
Indeed.
3 people were presented to the flag bearer, and he made his choice, and he has made public why he chose Ifeanyi Okowa. Not that he has any. He has anything having to do with maybe the emphasizing on the roles and the status of.
There are those who believe that this leaves your party, this decision leaves your party with a lot of fence mending to do.
No, that
you have to be pacifying a lot of people.
No, it was a natural process of, and it has fizzled out. It was a natural process Naturally, when you make a choice among many, there seem to be, but the people involved are matured people. They are loyal members of the PDP. They are part of the PDP, and the success of PDP, there will be critical factors in the success of PDP. What you hear, these pockets and some bits of protest or whatever you can call it. These are things that have subsided, they have fizzled out, and they don't matter.
Let me ask you more directly. The decision when the PDP governors were meeting when they decided that the presidency should be zoned to the south of the country, it was decided in Asaba in Delta State. A number of people felt that there was a lack of sincerity on the part of their host for accepting to host that, and then later on, when things did not go the way that the PDP governors had decided, then that it was sort of immoral for him to have accepted that position of being a vice presidential candidate. Has your party been able to get past that reading, that feeling amongst, say, governors in the South?
No, I want to believe that has been taken care of by time, by other consideration, and by this loyalty that the people involved have for the party. That has gone. Mope, we are talking about right now about the issue of what value is a fine going to add to this ticket. Now, and when eventually the PDP succeeds, God willing, in the 2023 elections, in terms of governance, in terms of facing the challenges, the pressing issues now before us as a nation, that is the thing that should be uppermost in our mind, that we must focus on these very critical issues. And I believe that this perfect choice will very much add strong and very impacting value to the PPC's quest to rebuild and rescue Nigeria.
Let me flip this to my colleagues in Lagos.
All right, Mr. Haruna, well, you said there's wide acceptance of the VP nominee for the PDP. So in that 19-man presidential screening committee who voted, how many of them voted for Mr. Okowa?
There was no any voting. What transpired was a committee was saddled with the responsibility of presenting 3 names. And those names were presented to the presidential flag bearer of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar Wazirin Adamawa, and he made a dispassionate, objective, and very value-laden choice.
So 16 people,
Okowa.
16 people did not vote for Governor of Rivers, and 3 people vote for Governor Okowa?
Chamberlain, I want to tell you that what transpired was the committee presented 3 persons to the presidential flag bearer, and he made his choice.
Hold on. I said
that I know.
Did 16 people vote for Governor of Rivers State and 3 vote for Governor of Delta State? Yes or no?
For God's sake, 3 names were presented to the presidential flag bearer, and he made his choice.
So there
was discounting
there was no
the
voting.
Merits of other people.
The committee did not vote.
The committee presented 3 names to the presidential flag bearer, and he made his choice.
All right.
And you've heard the reasons why he made that choice.
We'll take it that you're saying that they did not vote. That's what we interpret you're saying. So who was the 3rd person in that that they presented?
3 persons were presented.
Who is the 3rd person?
Yes.
Who is the 3rd?
Who is the 3rd person?
Yeah.
Well, can we come back again, please?
You heard me.
Who is this 3rd person?
Yes.
3 persons were presented to the presidential flag bearer, and he made a choice out of the 3 people, and that is Ifeanyi Okowa.
You're repeating yourself.
And that has been widely accepted by PDP followership.
Yeah, you're repeating yourself. You asked the question again. Who is the 3rd person? We know of Governor of Rivers, Governor of Delta. Who is the number 3 person that was presented to
and Governor of Akwa Ibom, Udom, Emmanuel.
He was presented to the committee.
Yes, these are all valuable leaders in their own right in the PDP.
So, Mr. Seidu, if you deny that, or if you say rather, I beg your pardon, that there were wide consultations and there was no voting, why were Governor Ikpeazu, Governor Makinde, Governor Fintiri, Governor Tom, Governor Ugwai, and Governor Wike, why were they absent from that presentation, the unveiling of the VP nominee? Why were they absent?
It is always certain ceremonies, because of certain schedules that will, of course, make them unavoidably absent, could be the factor that is why they were not there.
So,
but others were there. And it has always been in meetings, in ceremonies like that, or on occasions like that. You find 1, 2, 3 or the other persons or governors or whatever may not be available because they may be engaged somewhere else, or something may be happening somewhere else that they could be unavoidably absent.
But the report is that,
so that does
these
not in any way implies that...
Mr. Seidu, the report is that these governors are the ones who voted for Governor Wike as the presidential nominee. And how is the party going to deal with the consequences as a result of their disaffection that their preferred candidate for the position of VP nominee was not picked?
No, there was no anything like voting, as you are implying. What took place, what transpired was there was a rigorous scrutiny and a search, and preference was given to South region because of its roles, because of the control the PDP has over that region, and because of it has always been the home base of support of the PDP, and been a critical region in the country, and looking at those personalities, their roles, and that's why they were presented as 3 persons. Any one of them could have been the choice. But eventually 1 person has to be picked, and that is it. So what is being said that there was a voting, there was this, there was that. No, what I know is that a committee was given a term of reference of coming up with 3 names, and those 3 names were presented to the presidential flag bearer, and eventually he made a dispassionate, objective choice in the person of Ifeanyi Okowa, and that is the story.
So why have there been no congratulatory messages for Governor Okowa, particularly from Governor Wike, who was not picked? There has been no reaction from him at all. There has been congratulatory messages to Ifeanyi Okowa from all over the place. I don't want to talk about why one has not done that, because eventually, of course, you don't know. There are conversations in private. You don't know. But what I know is that I have not had any statement coming from any person, a governor or any other person among the PDP leadership that said that he will not congratulate Ifeanyi Okowa because of certain reservations. And this, for God's sake, these things do not exist in reality. These are all people who make a lot of speculations in the social media and talk about things that are not real. Well, you see, they have not been part of the process. They are not amongst those people that were part of this committee. They were not part of the consultation that was made so wide.
We know the build-up to this whole process.
And that's why you hear
Pardon me, Mr. Saidu, we know the build-up to this whole process, from pre-national the special national convention to what actually happened during the national convention, to the statements made by at least one of the aspirants about the whole process, how things didn't go the way they ought to have gone, and how we thought that was wrongly done, and of course how we got here. So these disaffections had been there prior, but I'd just like you to quickly respond to this before I toss it back to Mark. So this is like deja vu, what played out pre-2015 with President Goodluck Jonathan. It looked like some governors, in fact, they had that it was a G7 governors who were not exactly happy with the way things were going in the party. And we saw what happened with the elections, with your party eventually, your party losing out, and the APC clinching it twice now. So aren't you worried that your party may be going down that same route? If these governors are not exactly happy with how things are turning out, perhaps your party might lose out as well.
Never. Never. No, never. This time around, much more than ever before, the PDP is united. It is focused. It has the task of galvanizing Nigerians. It has the task of conscientizing Nigerians. It has the task of going along with the feelings, the yearnings, and expectations of Nigerians. Everybody has had that.
Just one more thing.
Has seen that.
One more thing from here before.
Having been in power and having performed wonderfully well.
Just one more thing from here.
And having
just a minute.
Strengthened the unity of the country.
Okay, respond to this before we toss it back. There are two things basically now. Two things at the moment. Now, a group think that the chairman of the party, number one, is he going to resign as the meeting of the Northern Caucus agreed, such that a caretaker chairman will be in place? And what happens if the secretary of the party doesn't sign the approval?
Chamberlain, you don't speculate things that do not come. When the time comes for decisions to be made,
was there a meeting or not?
Was there
a meeting of the Northern Caucus with him or not? Yes or no? You should be part of that meeting. Was there a meeting of the Northern Caucus about his position, whether or not he was going to step down?
The most important thing is wait for the party to make the right decision. You don't bulldoze.
This is not speculation
now. You need to stampede the party to come. It has its own program. It has set of decisions it is going to make at the right time. It has timelines for every decision it will make. So the PDP should not, in fact, be stampeded into making a pronouncement when the time for such pronouncements do not come. That is it. PDP abides by whatever pledge it makes. It does whatever it decides to do at the right time, and when it will be more rewarding. So, for the fact that certain things were done in 2015, this is not the case. What we have here is a united party, supported by its serving governors, supported by its former governors, supported by the BOT, supported by the NWC, the national officers, and its followership all over the country. And the great reservoir of Nigerians that are waiting to see that the PDP brings about meaningful change. And I want to tell you this. Look, if you want to find an antithesis to what is obtaining in the country today, the kind of negative downward developments we're having as a nation, you find that the right party that could do such a thing will be the PDP. And it's in the position to do that. Okay. Its leadership is well-informed, knowledge, erudite, and very calm. And we have found in a ticket that presents a perfect match. And I am sure the task of delivering Nigeria by the PDP has been cut by about 40%. especially this very ticket now we have got it. As perfect as it is.
Mr. Haruna Saidu, I'm sure that, Nigerians are listening to you and they have heard you. If your party is united, time will tell. If it's disunited, time will also tell. I think that we can leave it there, but we wish you all the best as you go on into the polls. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. Mr. Haruna Saidu is a member of the PDP Board of Trustees and also former chairman of PDP in Kebbi State. Thank you once again for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a few messages from you. I'll quickly do this one from Henry Okeke. It says, the only sermon on the mount that is needed in Nigeria right now ahead of 2023 general election is the fact that citizens who are guilty of vote selling don't have the right to complain of bad governance and lack of basic human amenities.
Someone on the mount. Well, Henry says, I'm shocked that the nation is treating vote buying with levity. Why then do cheats in an examination or athletes that doped are criminalized and sanctioned? Cheating in one sector should be considered cheating in any other place and appropriate sanctions applied.
Well, take a look at this one from AGK as they say, vote buying is not our culture. It must be shown to be evil and counterproductive. We must let people know that vote buying is worse than not voting at all. Moreover, the vote buyers should be seen as enemies of the state.
Interesting. And the Prof. Imonoka Enakena says, Ekiti elections, democracy can't be enthroned in an atmosphere of complete anarchy or criminality. Our political elites must reevaluate our morals and abhor vote buying and rigging. Electorates must be objective and vote candidates with capabilities to grow the economy. That sounds like Uhuru. I wonder if that's achievable.
And lastly, Comrade Dare says, after declaration of winner of an election, the only logical way for unsatisfied contestants to seek redress is through the court. Ekiti election has proved to us once again that there is more work yet undone in our electioneering process as we prepare for 2023. And that's why these off-season elections are quite important. We'll see what happens in Osun, but we'll continue to emphasize lessons from this one. Thank you so much for watching this morning. Thank you for your messages and contributions. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And I am Chamberlain. So, goodbye.